The Panthers tonight have a chance to take a 3-2 series lead, but as the series has now shifted to Toronto, it feels like more than just a fresh start for the Cats.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, May 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12, joined by Jacob Winans on this edition of Winans Wednesday. You can follow him on X at Jacob Winans8. Shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. Today, we are going to discuss everything from the fallout from Game 4, from Max Domi to Evan Rodrigues' health. Segment number 2, we are going to discuss the power play for the Panthers and maybe do the Panthers have the Leafs where they want them based on the state of their special teams for them. We're going to discuss the energy that the fourth line has brought. And also, we are going to continue that into how it's a breath of fresh air for the Panthers coming into Game 5 with a chance to take a 3-2 series lead going back to Sunrise, which we had guaranteed a Game 6. So, Jacob, welcome back to the show, my friend, and let's get right into it. So, Evan Rodrigues was on the ice yesterday, right before the Panthers took their flight to Toronto. They're already there, but it's great to see that even though after OEL had that interference call on Evan Rodrigues, that he's still able to skate. We still have no idea whether he's going to get cleared or not. Paul Maurice discussed that. So the Panthers avoided a little bit of disaster there for their top line.
Yeah, I first want to address the hit. I'm a little surprised it didn't get a further look from player safety. I didn't think it would be a suspension. Didn't seem like a suspendable hit to me, looking at replays after the fact. But I did think OEL would at least get a fine. I was a little surprised that it was reduced to a minor in the game. I thought that probably was going to stand up as a major given the precedent set with Hagel's interference and then Matthew Tkachuk's interference on Gensel. I thought both of those were rightfully called majors in the moment, and I thought OEL his hit would follow, and it just speaks to the lack of consistency from player safety, which I know we're going to talk more about in this segment. But with that said, it's good that Erod seems to be at least mostly okay. We don't know if he'll be cleared tonight. If he's not, you would think probably Mackey gets back into the lineup and maybe plays in the top 6. The Panthers definitely have options there. If they want to go a little more defensive minded, you can throw Boquist back in the lineup. They've got Sturm still able to play, so they've got options. But we obviously are hoping that he's able to play. He's the lines, the balance of the lines the last few games, it's been pretty perfect. We've seen the best of Carter Verhaeghe being able to play on the second line, and that's what makes Evan Rodrigues so valuable to this team. He starts the playoffs on line 4. Right now he's playing on line 1. He can play literally anywhere in your lineup, and that's such a valuable tool to have. So we hope he's able to play, but it at least seems like the worst was avoided, and if he's not able to play tonight, I don't expect him to be out much longer. So we'll see if he takes the ice for warmups, but it would be huge to have Erod back in the lineup for the rest of this game or the rest of this series.
Yeah, no doubt. And thankfully, step one was get him getting on the ice. But on the Toronto Maple Leafs side of things, Anthony Stolarz was on the ice for the Leafs for practice for them after he did not travel with the team to South Florida. Obviously, with head injuries, you should avoid being in the air. So thankfully for him, he's okay for them. And also, there's a whole bunch of back and forth when it comes to the comments in the media from Craig Berube talking about Kulikov's elbow to Mitch Marner, and then Sam Bennett responding with with another one, which we spoke about at the end of the game, with Max Domi taking the run at Barkov with the boarding call, and Bennett talking about obviously, quote, obviously he was trying to take a run at Barkey out there, close quote. And it's going to be interesting that Bennett has mostly been matched with the Tavares line for him, but the line that has had the most matchups in Toronto has been the Max Domi line, and we've seen one fight between Max Domi and Sam Bennett back just last season, where Bennett got the best of him, and Domi only got fined $5,000 for him. So I'm, like I said with Frank Rikas the other day, I'm not. Is that a type of boarding call that you would suspend probably in the regular season? Yes. But I do believe that just how it's judged in the postseason is a little bit different. So it's a little bit of a disappointed but not surprised for in the way that I see it. So there's a lot of just things going on right before we saw Matthew Tkachuk yelling right at William Nylander saying, "Oh, I'm going to get you next." There, people are already mad and want the league to do something after Matthew Tkachuk for him, and so there's another thing in relation to just how tense this could be coming into Game 5, knowing the history and then what was even said just last game.
Yeah, there's been a lot to talk about, and a lot to unpack there. But I'll say this to start: we talked a couple weeks ago about if the Panthers and Leafs are in a matchup, and you get the Leafs into a physical, nasty type of game, that's not what they want to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now, 4 games into this series, the physicality, the forecheck, the mental games, you're starting to see that swing right into what the Panthers like. And I think the comments from Craig Berube, he's lobbying, he's trying to shift the attention. He wants the NHL to look at the Kulikov hit, which, by the way, that was nothing. Kulikov comes in with the elbow a little high, but Marner stops and spins into that, like does a pirouette move, which, I mean, I guess he's trying to avoid the hit, but puts himself in a much more dangerous position. That made no sense to me. And there was rightfully no further look at that. He's got to be smarter than that. It's better to absorb the hit than to put yourself into a more vulnerable spot where you could get hit in the head. But that kind of speaks to what the Panthers are doing right now and the toll it's taking on the Leafs. They're playing really, really physical. They've got, I believe, a total of 107 hits over the last 2 games. Guys on the Leafs are leaving the bench and coming back throughout the game. And reports are equipment issues or whatever the case may be. But we all have eyes. We see Chris Tanev every time he touches the puck is getting put through the glass, basically, and he's doubled over and hunched over, goes into the tunnel and comes back because he's a warrior. But you can only be a warrior for so long. And as we get further and further into this series, the famous Paul Maurice quote when they were playing against Bruins last season, pound their F&D. So in Game 7, they have nothing left. That's kind of what it looks like right now. Whether the Panthers win or not tonight, the physical toll is adding up, and I think they're at a good position to close this series strong in a best 2 out of 3. But with that said, the physicality is also coming in. It's starting to show in the mental side of things. And Max Domi, a guy who's not exactly known for being super mentally stable, I guess, in some of these situations, he tends to get his wires crossed and crosses the line quite a bit. We've seen it multiple times, especially against the Panthers. It's a dirty play, and I didn't like that there was no suspension because. Yes, Barkov doesn't get hurt, but he easily could have. And the fact that it's called a major on the ice, there's just a few seconds left in the game. He's essentially getting away with no punishment except for $5,000 because they don't have to suffer on the 5-minute penalty kill. That penalty time doesn't carry over to the next game.
Yeah.
It basically opens the door for players. If you're willing to spend $5,000, do whatever you want at the end of a game. And if you injure somebody or you do something stupid, you take a run at somebody at the end of a game that you just lost. It's open season at the end of games right now because there's no punishment and there's no penalty time that you have to worry about. It's sure I'll just go board the star player on the other team. I'll send their captain head neck first into the boards, and then all it's going to cost me is $5,000 when I'm making millions. That's a pretty easy decision if you're a guy who's trying to make an impact on the series or maybe take a guy out. So I thought it was a irresponsible ruling from the Department of Player Safety, but we're not going to sit here and complain about it. It's on to Game 5.
Yep, no doubt. And one of our listeners pointed out this isn't the first time that Domi's acted up when he sucker punched Ekblad. I'll say who the listener is, at Rude Deck. He replied to me talking about that sucker punch from Max Domi when he was with Montreal in the preseason game, and then how he was only suspended for one. And he said that it was a few years ago. I'm like, few years ago, more than half a decade ago. It feels that long ago for these two when that happened. So not the first time that we've seen these shenanigans from Max Domi from him here. But we're gonna move on and go into segment number 2, where we're going to discuss the power play. But we're also going to discuss something that Panthers minority owner Doug Cifu was involved in, and also report the news based on the latest there. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each serving has 6 grams of protein, give you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Back on this Wednesday, May 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday. So just got to do some reporting on the latest of everything in the world of the Florida Panthers, due to the fact that we are a Florida Panthers-centric podcast. The other day on Twitter, Panthers minority owner Doug Cifu was getting into a little bit of an argument with a Leafs fan, and the conversation was related to some of the issues going on in our world due to Israel, Hamas, and of course all the tensions that are going on with USA and Canada. And then Doug Cifu replying back with replies talking about 51st state for against the guy, and also putting his defense there. And if you guys want to look at the tweets, you could Google exactly what he said. But my opinion is, whether you agree with Doug Cifu, what he said or not, and yes, there are many people on the Twitter sphere who has thumbs and can say a lot of cruel things. You are in a position of power with an organization. So you, Doug Cifu, are an example, and you have to be a better example. And the NHL has indefinitely suspended him. We don't know what's going to happen as far as his stake in the team in the future, but when it comes to the NHL and their relations to Canada, these comments don't look good, and I'll leave it at that. Jacob, any quick opinions before we move on to other things before this?
Just very quickly, I think if you're in a position of authority and you represent a franchise in any public facing role, you just got to be responsible about what you say and how you say it. And it's also important if you're representing a team or a franchise, people are going to automatically assume that whatever you say aligns with the views of that franchise, and that's dangerous place to be if you're gonna go saying things that are hurtful or insulting. And I just think it was a lack of responsibility on Doug Cifu's part, and he will he will have to make amends for that with the league, which is beyond what we talk about here, and that'll be between him and the commissioner. So we'll hope he handles that in the way that's needed and is able to repair the trust of the NHL with him and with the franchise.
No doubt. No easy transition from here to the next topic that we're talking about. But when it comes to the Panthers and them getting this series tying at 2, of course we spoke about the power plays, that it was 6-3 in favor of the Panthers. The power plays are actually still total for the series 15-14 still in favor of Toronto coming into Game 5 for them. But there's two different conversations. Let's start with the Panthers power play first before we get to the Leafs power play. It's funny because there's so much complaints about Seth Jones and like the fact that I get it. There was like a big turnover at the blue line that led to a breakaway for Toronto. But at the same time, people sometimes don't look at the game scorecards. And after Game 4, he was the best game score for the Panthers there. So, and the fact is, the Panthers are still converting at a high rate for the power play at 21% in the series for them. They're 3 of 14 for them. So the power play for them, obviously they make the change early on in round 2. When it takes a fourth power play with the Leafs shooting themselves in the foot, sometimes that could bring frustrations across the fan base when it comes to how the Panthers conduct their power play. But still, I don't see a reason for the Panthers to make changes right now on their unit. And I've also noticed how the Panthers have also managed things. Have you noticed that they're not using Sam Reinhart mostly in the bumper position as much as they were? He's also being used as that extra, not necessarily extra blue liner, but he's lined up more on the top of the circle as far as like protecting a rush, knowing the Toronto speed game for them. So I also think that's why we're not seeing as much of a conversion rate as we want, because of the fact that we see a little bit of Sam Reinhart protecting the rush, of him positioning himself on top of the circle.
Yeah, I think they're giving Toronto a different look, and I'm okay with it. I think the forcing of the Sam Reinhart bumper play sometimes, especially over the course of a series, you can only go to the same look so many times. At some point, the other team is going to key in on it, and I think teams have started to key in on the Sam Reinhart bumper play a little bit. But with that said, I think they're starting to go with a little bit more of a look similar to what they ran in the playoffs 2 years ago, with Sam Reinhart on one side and Matthew Tkachuk on the opposite side, and let Tkachuk operate off the boards and off the sideboards and a little bit more net front, versus setting up really below the goal line and having to operate as more of a facilitator and a passer from there. So I'm okay with that. If you're going to give a little bit more of a net front presence, and then also have Sam Reinhart ready to help defend a rush, which has come in handy multiple times, I like the look. I think one thing that could help the power play a little bit more is more of a shooting mentality from Barkov. I've noticed that he's gotten a good bit of space coming off the faceoff circle area with the puck. I'd like to see him rip it a little bit more instead of always looking to pass, but that's kind of a small complaint. We've seen the Carter Verhaeghe backdoor plays work on both sides of the net, but the cross ice Matthew Tkachuk to Carter Verhaeghe tap in goal, that's exactly what you're looking for. Verhaeghe has such a unique ability to sort of get lost behind the defense and sneak his way backdoor for those looks, and we've seen him convert on the power play in that way multiple times in the postseason before. So I like that aspect of it. So yeah, just a little bit better puck responsibility from Seth Jones on the power play. That's a valid complaint, I guess, but I'm not super concerned with it. I'll definitely be, if the Panthers advance, I'd be a little more concerned about how that power play looks against Carolina's penalty kill, because their PK is absolutely outrageous. But for right now, I'm not too concerned or too stressed about the power play. All you really need to do is give yourself maybe a goal on the power play. That can be the difference, and then continue to dominate Toronto 5-on-5 and run a good penalty kill. We can count on the power play to supplement offense. We don't want to count on the power play to provide all of our offense. So as long as it's supplementing something, it's not the biggest stressor for me.
No doubt. And let's go on the other side on the penalty kill. The fact that the Panthers are keeping in position, keeping the sticks in lanes, and also the fact that a guy like Tomáš Nosek is coming into the mix, where he's playing with that too Luosterainen coming off the ice, where most of the time that he's played with a guy like Jesper Boquist coming out with, it's mostly been Lundell, Luosterainen, and then the change really came when Brad Marchand came into the mix. Now him and Lundell have been playing together for a while. But I mean, the fact that they're going 5 forward power play for the Leafs, and it's Marner as the guy who's the point man for the Leafs, and obviously he when they were running the 6-on-5, he's the one that's blocking the shots when the Panthers are trying to hit on the empty net as well. But the fact is that it really helps the Panthers as far as not using his offensive prowess to the best of his ability as well, because he has to be the one defending. But at the same time, it hasn't worked. And if you're bringing a guy like Morgan Riley or Ulrich Ekman-Larsson, they did that earlier in the series for like 1 or 2 power plays, and it was Matthew Knies, and Matthew Knies has been outperforming the core 4 for them. So I feel like even though you might get more offensive punch from Mitch Marner, if they're replacing Matthew Knies on that top unit, I think it's also advantage Panthers going into that, knowing the fact that Matthew Knies has proven himself to be a playoff performer here.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Toronto running that 5-man power or 5 forward power play with Marner at the top, because of the fact that Marner is probably their most skilled puck handler, definitely their most creative player, and he's also the farthest from the net on this power play. He's the farthest away from danger when he's running this power play at the point. And that's good. If you can, it's easier to keep Marner on the perimeter when he's setting up at the point. And that's where you want to keep Marner. When he gets in tight, when he gets in the slot, he can make such creative and nifty passes, and there's just no time to react. When he sets up on the face-off circles or the hashes, and he's able to pass cross ice and get Matthews open looks, get Nylander open looks, that's when he could be really, really lethal. So keeping him at the point, it's almost like Toronto is kind of playing right into what the Panthers want to do with him. And then having Knies on the second unit instead of the top unit, that's another big helper when that's going. So there's positives and negatives to it, because obviously 5 forward power play can be extremely dangerous from a skill perspective. But then if the Panthers force a turnover and go the other way, you'd rather have a forward back than a defenseman, even though Marner is fantastic defensively. That's a very underrated part of his game. He's a great defensive forward, but would rather have him back than a natural defenseman. So I think the Panthers have adapted to it well. It's going to continue to come down to winning faceoffs.
Yes.
And when Toronto has to basically kill 30 seconds of their own power play, going back, retrieving a puck, and then entering the zone and getting set up, that's a fourth of your power play right there. If you can start the power play or the penalty kill with the face-off win. So that's got to be the focus for the Panthers in killing these, and just stay out of the box. I mean, last game, Panthers were fortunate. Toronto takes the first 4 penalties of the game in the first period, which again speaks to their lack of discipline when the Panthers turn up the physicality. But Panthers got to stay out of the box, not get baited into any of the unnecessary stuff, and don't give them any extra opportunities, because you're playing with fire if you do. But win faceoffs, force them to set up, and keep Marner at the point and away from your net. You're going to be in a good spot. So I'm happy with it. But Nosek has been fantastic. He's been huge, and I think it was telling when Erod goes down in the last game. The rest of the game, they put Nosek on the top line because of his defensive responsibility. So big props to him stepping up and stepping in when he had basically lost his spot after the trade deadline.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk more about Tomasz Nosek and the fact that the Panthers are this fourth line is going into Toronto for the first time in this series after being reinserted into the lineup, and we're going to talk about how this game 5 for the Panthers feels like more than just a fresh start for them. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Third and final segment here on this Wednesday, May 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And a little on this day in Florida Panthers history, the Panthers defeated the Philadelphia Flyers by a final score of 4-1 in the Eastern Conference semifinals to advance to the conference final. 3 third period goals for them, had them break the game open and then defeat the Flyers by a final score of 4-1. And also yesterday, May 13th, we didn't have a show on yesterday. Our program is going to be Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday this week. Carter Verhaeghe scored less than 3 minutes into overtime to break the 26-year drought for the Panthers in a 4-3 victory over the Washington Capitals on this day in 2022. So, Jacob, coming into this game 5, it feels like more than just a fresh start for the Panthers, and it's not just only the 2-2 series tie for these two teams, but it's the fact that they've fixed the rush defense for them. They're not losing their battles. There's not those pinches in the offensive zone. The pucks are keeping in. The dump-in rates are over 50% for these last few games, so they're winning a lot of those battles. The center, the F3 is coming back and protecting the middle of the ice in their defensive zone. So that's been such a plus. And also, the key of the fourth line is always to not be a net negative for them. But this fourth line is being more than just not being a net negative. Their Corsi for percentage is 2/3. They carry that advantage over their opposition. And yeah, even to get them getting the goal, which happened to be against the top line of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So it's just been a more than just a breath of fresh air for this Panthers team. The fact that they've gotten a little bit of a jolt from that fourth line. So I think it's just for them. The Panthers are kind of seething coming into this matchup, because whenever the puck is in the offensive zone, obviously the Panthers are bringing more of the physicality. They're separating the puck, so pucks are getting into their opposition's end more. So it's kind of like running the football in football terms for them. That's a thing for them, that it feels so fresh when it comes to the last game. I know Paul Maurice discusses how there's no momentum going from game to game, but it really feels that the Panthers, I mean, we've seen this multiple times, even in the Stanley Cup final last year, give up so many rush chances, and then they clean it up by the time it's game 7. And also a stat for you before I give you the floor. Last postseason, when the Panthers had 2 days off, 5-2, and those 2 losses came in the Stanley Cup final only. Every single time after that, it's been a win for the Panthers. So the floor is yours when it comes to the fact that the Panthers have had 2 days off, and the fact that they cleaned up their game more going into game 5.
Yeah, so for me, this kind of feels a lot like last season going into Madison Square Garden with the 2-2 series. It's very, very similar as far as the pressure, the moment, the hostile environment they're going to be playing in. They seem to rise to the occasion, and there's certain guys on the team that tend to rise to the occasion in those matchups. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk, I'd be shocked if he doesn't make an impact on the game. Carter Verhaeghe, and kind of become an underrated topic, but Anton Lundell seems to have the clutch gene. He really performs in big games when he's needed. And then, of course, Brad Marchand. You can't say enough about what he's done, especially in the postseason. And it was always about postseason performance when you got Marchand. We didn't even really care what he did for the rest of regular season, because we just wanted playoff Marchand. And he's definitely been a huge asset in the postseason so far. With that said, no, momentum might not be necessarily a tangible thing carrying from game to game. You can't see it, but I do feel like you can feel it. The Panthers have gotten better as the series has gone on, and Toronto has struggled to adapt. Game 3, I feel like that was Toronto's chance to really kind of take control of the series, and they let it slip. The Panthers were relentless in that game, but I feel like Toronto really let an opportunity slip in Game 3. And Game 4, the Panthers found themselves. That game shouldn't have been close. Joseph Woll played out of his mind and stood on his head for that entire game, but that game shouldn't have been close. The Panthers were dominant in Game 4 from start to finish. And if it's going to look like that, if the Panthers are going to play like that, and that's the game they're going to bring, there's not much you can do to stop it. And I think at 5-on-5, if the Panthers keep this thing at 5-on-5, Toronto's going to have a really hard time even staying in this series. Their defense has been good, but they're taking a ton of punishment back there, and you're starting to see some leaks and some cracks in that defense. The forecheck has been nasty when the Panthers are winning faceoffs, and when they're playing the dump and chase game. They've made a slight adjustment. I feel like they've been rimming it around the boards higher, so that Joseph Woll, who's really, really good at cutting off those dump ins and did a really great job of it in the first couple of games. They're rimming it around the glass versus the boards, and it's harder to knock those pucks down and stop the forecheck. So that was an adjustment I think the Panthers made, which has paid dividends. The fourth line has brought incredible energy. And anytime you get a goal from your fourth line against the opposition's top line, that's a huge win. You don't see that too often in the playoffs, and that's a big swing in momentum, especially when it's a goal that gives you a lead. We kind of talked about how the Panthers were a 5-line team coming into this postseason. With all the injuries towards the end of the year, we saw Nosek, Gadjevich, and Greer deployed in a few games to end the season, and they were the best line during some of those games. We just didn't really get to judge that too much because so many guys were out, and we were playing with a lot of AHL players, and you just didn't really think about it too much because you didn't think that was going to be a playoff line. But they played really, really well at the end of the season, and now that they've more than earned their spot, that whole line going in, and they've made an impact. So it's good to see that. But I feel good about the way the Panthers are playing right now. We know they're prone to relapse sometimes. They can find their game and then lose it just as quickly and have to get it back. But I think they found the recipe, and I'm excited about that because if they play the way they did in Game 4, I don't see a way for Toronto to keep up.
Yeah, and you mentioned faceoffs are huge, with Toronto just being a great faceoff team. Also, the fact that the Panthers are possibly, depending on the health of Evan Rodrigues, of the wingers being in a different position on the top line. Verhaeghe has a new breath of fresh air with being on that second line, even though they were negative in the regular season. But hey, all that matters is in this part of the season and performing at this time. And also the fact that Joseph Woll is a goaltender more willing to play on top of his crease. So if there's that backdoor play, there's more space to the front of the net, and we saw that in the goal that Verhaeghe scored back in Game 4 for them. So that's a very important part when it comes to just how you possibly break up stuff. And the fact that when it comes to the Leafs and breaking out of their own end, it's not the defense just getting out on their own. The fact that there's a guy coming in, there's possible for an errant pass in their end, it just takes a strange bounce off the boards. There could be an open lane for possibly a one-time a slap shot for the Panthers there, and then just you and the goalie right there, and it could be a good opportunity for the Panthers. So that's what the forecheck and the physicality, even if they don't land a hit on them, for them. So that's another thing for the Panthers here, and just how ferocious they could be here, and how they could just constantly overwhelm them. And also, let's not forget the shots for the Panthers led every single game in shots except for Game 1, and it was only by 1, just only because the first period was a 13-4 shot on goal advantage for the Leafs. They hadn't found their game yet, but hey, rather get it out of the way early on than later. Things didn't necessarily average out until games 3 and 4 with the Panthers getting the pressure on, and we spoke about all the shot blocks in games 1 and 2. That's going to be a big adjustment for the Panthers coming into this on how they set the matchups, because We know we're going to see Marner and Matthews together against Barkov again. We're gonna see the Domi line face off against the Bennett line again for him. So it's going to be, and we spoke about it with Nick last week before this series shifted to Sunrise, and he countered it with, it's not really about the line matchups. It's more about how can you prevent the rushes, and Panthers success. Let's see if they can do so when Toronto dictates the matchup. So very excited to see how the Panthers adjust. So when it comes to their opportunities to take a 3-2 series lead. And also, you spoke about the Rangers series last year. What happened in those 4 games prior to the series shifting in Madison Square Garden? They didn't all necessarily happen in the same order. There was a shutout by Sergei Bobrovsky, and there was also an overtime winner. Just happened to be in different order once again. So is this a similar path for the Panthers here? So, Jacob, but I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Any last words before we sign off here for the morning, before we get to Game 5?
Yeah, just one very quick thing that we talk about all the time, but just have a ton of gratitude for the position the team is in and the position that the franchise is in and the fan base is in. We went through a lot of years not having games like this to look forward to. So I know everyone's nervous. Everyone is on the edge of their seat about how this series is going to play out. But until proven otherwise, our team is the defending Stanley Cup champion. And that's a lot of fun to say still. And I'm excited for what happens tonight. I'm excited for the rest of the playoffs, and just very, very fortunate that we get to sit here and talk about hockey games that we're still playing, and we're not previewing the draft or free agency or some of the things that we've had to do in years past around this time. So a lot of gratitude for that, and gratitude for you having me on every week to talk about this stuff. I really enjoy it.
Absolutely. All you can ask for the Panthers in this moment is an opportunity, and it truly is an opportunity for them. And for you guys, you could follow Jacob Winans on X at Jacob Winans8. You could follow me on X at Monoman12. And we're going to be back here on Thursday to recap this game between the Florida Panthers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, Jacob, thank you so much, and see you next week.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.